Hello everyone and welcome to our first video on the Mechanism mod for Minecraft version 1.19.2. Today we are thrilled to guide you through this mod's fascinating features. In this tutorial we'll cover the essentials and dive deep into ore processing, taking you all the way up to tier 3. So don't worry if you need to jump around. We have included timestamps throughout the video so you can easily skip to the part you're looking for. We will explore how to set up your machines, optimize your resources, and even share some tips and tricks along the way. Whether you are a beginner looking to get started or an experienced player wanting to refine your setup, you are in the right place. So grab your tools and let's embark on this mechanism journey together. Let's start with the ores added by this mod. The first being osmium. Now osmium is the most important ore as it's used in many crafting recipes and you'll need a lot of it. So be sure to mine plenty. It comes in normal and deep slate version as well as shard, crystal, dust, dirty dust, clump, ingot, raw nugget, block, and raw block form. The mod also adds tin, lead, and uranium along with other materials such as bronze available in dust, ingot, nugget, and block version, refined obsidian, refined glowstone, and steel. It even adds variants for vanilla ores such as copper clump, gold clump, iron clump, dirty dust, dirty crystal, as well as obsidian dust, netherite dust, diamond dust, emerald dust, quartz dust, charcoal dust, coal dust, and lapis lazuli dust. There are other ores and items too, but they won't be important in this video. Moving on to the machines, we'll start with the metallurgic infuser. Now this block is one of the mod's starting blocks with its recipe displayed here. So as a side note, if you haven't already, please download JEI 2. It will be a big help with a complex mod like this. Now what this block does is infuses various materials, generally into metals, to create metallurgic alloys or other components. Its crafting recipe and tier, which include basic, advanced, elite, and ultimate, are all shown here. Generally, the function remains the same across tiers, as having a higher tier doesn't increase energy efficiency or speed. What it does increase is the number of slots inside machine. So for example, the lowest tier, the metallurgic infuser, only has one slot, meaning only one ore or one stack can be processed. But if we move to the basic tier, it increases to 3 slots, allowing 3 ores or 3 stacks to be processed. While the metallurgic infuser consumes 8 kfe, the basic consumes 12 kfe. Similarly, advanced has 5 slots and uses 20 kfe, elite has 7 slots and uses 28 kfe, and finally ultimate has 8 slots and uses 38 kfe. All the other tiers have almost the same slots and power requirement, so I won't go over them anymore. Now moving on to tier 1 ore processing machine, we first have energized smelter with its recipe and tiers. This machine functions just like a furnace but uses energy instead of fuel to smelt things. Now next, with its crafting recipe and tier, we have the enrichment chamber. This machine is used to enrich ore into 2 of its counterpart as well as perform many other operations. Now if we look here, we will see tier 1 processing in full. It only uses input from the input to the enrichment chamber through the logistical transporter and outputs from the energized smelter. You don't really need the pipes because you can eject the ore onto other machines, but I'm showing it this way for clarity. One thing to note, if you have raw ore and not an ore block, you'll need at least 3 of the raw ore to even start the smelter, or it won't turn on. Also, on a side note, if you look in the machine, you'll see a lot of button and a snake looking thing. We won't touch the snake looking one. If we click on the button or the side configs, you'll see that there are colors here. Now each of these buttons represent a face of your machine. Right now I am using the right side as input, the left as output, and the bottom as energy, so that my machine doesn't mix up with anything. This is the config I've gone with all the machines, so I won't repeat it again. But basically this is very useful if you try making complex machine with pipes running all over them. Now after you put in 3 of the ores, you will get 1 extra ingot. This isn't really ore doubling, as if it were, we will get 6 ores. Ore doubling only occurs if you put in the ore blocks and not the raw ore. So if you put in 1 iron ore, and you will get 2 iron ingots, essentially doubling it. Now moving on to tier 2, in addition to all machines we had before, we also have a crusher, including its recipe and tiers. This machine is used to crush ingots into their dust counterpart next to the purification chamber with its crafting recipe and tiers. Now this is an advanced machine capable of turning ores into 3 clumps, serving as a base for 300% ore processing. And next up is electrolytic separator. Now we are getting into chemicals, which are mostly mid-chem items. This machine uses the process of electrolysis to separate certain gas and liquid into 2 different gases. Finally, we have a water pump with its recipe displayed. What this water pump does is takes waters and pumps it into mechanical or any compatible pipe. So unlike other mechanism block, this doesn't have a transport configuration. So the output and energy input are always fixed. The top will always be output and the back will always be energy input. Now as for the tier 2 processing, there is a bit of the change. The input of ores now starts from the purification chamber to crusher to enrichment chamber to smeltery and finally output. While the first tier was enrichment chamber to smelter to output. You'll notice that in this tier The purification chamber requires oxygen along with power. Where did that come from? Well, if we look at the back, I've tried not to make it like too complicated, but this is how it runs. Starting from the pump, water is taken out and transported via a mechanical pipe into the separator, which separates the water into hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen isn't required and the oxygen is pumped into the purification chamber. I suggest you set the dump access mode to always open so that there is no clogging or stopping the machine. Now coming back to the machine, if we put in one ore block, at the end we get 3 ingots. Now finally tier 3 ore processing. This introduces our first multi-block, the thermal evaporator. It has 3 main blocks: the thermal evaporation block, valve and controller. Their crafting recipes are surprisingly easy, as you can see them on the screen. We will talk about it more later. Moving on to the chemical infuser, which is a machine that creates brand new gases by infusing 2 other gases, as well as chemical injector, which is an elite machine capable of turning ores into phosphors, serving as the foundation for 400% ore processing. As for the actual placement, it's just like before, but there is a chemical injector before the purification chamber. What's different is the backward part. Here we have used the multi-block part for the thermal evaporation. The bottom has to be 4x4 for it to work, and it should be at least 3 blocks tall, accounting for the floor. The controller and valve can be placed in any area of the tower except for the floor. On the side note, if the heat, which affects production, isn't enough for you, you can either use resistive heaters or fuel wood heaters to heat the tower, or alternatively place advanced solar panels on all 4 sides of the tower top. The tower produces brine, which goes out to a separator, turning it into chlorine and sodium. We will only be needing chlorine for now. Sodium will be useful in the later video, but I suggest storing as much as possible. The produced chlorine goes straight into the infuser along with the hydrogen we produced before. Both mix and turn into hydrogen chloride, which then goes straight into the chemical injector, which is used in ore quadrupling. Thank you for watching the video. I hope it helped you in some way. Please feel free to comment with any problems you have encountered, opinions you'd like to share, or solutions you'd like me to try. If the video gets 5 likes, next week I'll cover how to produce electricity with this mod. Again, thank you so much for watching. This is Bad Viper signing off.